The piece I've selected for the prelude is a piece called Flor de Loto, Lotus Blossom, by the Mexican composer Rodrigo Carbajo, who goes by Rocky Carbajo.
Good morning. I'm Sophia Haas, and I'm a member of the Board of Trustees here at South Valley Unitarian Universalist Societies. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and sometimes they. Come, whoever you are welcome here. No matter your age, your size, the color of your eyes, your hair, your skin, you are welcome here. No matter your gender, whom you love, how you speak, or whatever your abilities, you are welcome here. You are welcome here whether you come with laughter in your heart, tears in your eyes. You are welcome here. No matter what you have experienced in the past, no matter what awaits you in the future, you are welcome here. Whether you believe in God all of the time, or some of the time, or none of the time, you are welcome here. This is a community of open minds, loving hearts, and willing hands. You are welcome here at South Valley Unitarian Universalist Society.
This week brought news of yet another African-American man shot by a policeman. Jacob Blake, a Black man, was left paralyzed after he was shot 7 times in front of his 3 kids in Kenosha, Wisconsin. It breaks my heart every week to have to speak yet another name of someone. And I'd like to just hold a moment of space for Jacob Blake's family and for all those unnamed men and women who have found themselves victimized by police that don't know when to stop. We stand in solidarity with our Black and brown brothers and sisters and siblings. Our call to worship was written by Adrienne Rich, and it's entitled, In Those Years. In those years, people will say we lost track of the meaning of we, of you. We found ourselves reduced to I, and the whole thing became silly, ironic, and terrible. We were trying to live a personal life, and yes, that was the only life we could bear witness to. But the great dark birds of history screamed and plunged into our personal weather. They were headed somewhere. They were headed somewhere else, but their beaks and their pinions drove along the shore through the rags of fog where we stood saying, I. So I invite you in this moment to remind yourself that we are stronger when we remember that we are a we, and that together we can make it through this time. Let us now sing together and lift our spirits in the spirit of that we. For the month of August, our gathering hymn is Come Sing a Song With Me. And the lyrics will be in your chat box, and I encourage you to sing along in your home. Everyone will be muted except Mary and David this morning.
Come sing a song with me. Come sing a song with me. Come sing a song with me, that I might know your mind. And I'll bring you hope when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time. Come dream a dream with me. Come dream a dream with me. Come dream a dream with me, that I might know your mind. And I'll bring you hope when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time. Come walk in rain with me. Come walk in rain with me. Come walk in rain with me, that I might know your mind. And I'll bring you hope when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time. Come share a rose with me. Come share a rose with me. Come share a rose with me, that I might know your mind. And I'll bring you hope when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time.
Beautiful. Good morning, everyone. Lori Quigley is going to drop the chalice lighting words in the chat box. And if you have a small candle or chalice that you would like to light, please feel free to unmute yourself for this. And we will stand and we'll say our chalice lighting words and do our actions to go with those. So everyone, please join in. Go ahead and unmute. It'll be a little chaotic. And we light this
chalice
for
the warmth of love,
for the
for the
light
light
of
of
truth,
truth,
and the energy of action. And Tammy will now mute us. I would like to welcome you this morning to South Valley Unitarian Universalist Society. We're an intentionally diverse religious community, and all are welcome here. We'd like to extend an especially warm welcome to those of you who are visiting us for the first time. We're so glad you found us and that you're here, and we'd love to get to know you. Our greeter today, Lori, is going to drop our connection card into the chat box, and that's a way for you to connect with us if you'd like to, and let us know more about yourself. This is a caring and supportive community, and during this time of physical distancing, we're being creative in how we take care of each other. If you're interested in pastoral care, please use the pastoral care card on our website, and also Lori will be dropping that in the chat box as well. All of our online services are intergenerational, and the children and youth religious education gatherings are also happening on a different day of the week in a separate time most weeks. To find out more about the religious ed classes, you can see the Happenings newsletter that goes out weekly. You can contact Rebecca Britt, who's probably going to wave right now. If you're gallery view, you'll see her. And she is our Director of Religious Exploration. And her email address will be in the chat box. Lori will put that there. There's a lot happening in our community. And if you'd like to learn more and join in midweek events, please check our South Valley website. We'd love to connect. I have 2 announcements. There's several things happening after the service today. So first of all, after a 10-minute break at the end of service, we'll come back and have social time, and Tammy Felt will facilitate that. And she is being our Zoom runner today as well. So thank you, Tammy. That's a fun way to just connect and hang out. And then there will be 2 other meetings today after the service. So CUPS, Covenant of UU Pagans, will meet at 12:30 today. And if you're new to Unitarian Universalism and would like to learn more about the UU or our community in specific, there is a meeting for that at noon. And so both of those Zoom links are going to be dropped in the chat box right now as well. And you would be able to join either of those you'd like to. Okay, we're going to share in the warmth of our community, which is another opportunity of a little chaos and a little fun, to unmute yourself at this time and say hello. Maybe put everybody on gallery view so you can see everybody, and say hello and put where you're from in the chat box if you want. Hi, everyone.
Hi. Hello, everybody.
Everybody.
Uh,
Nice to see everybody.
Your guitar sounds great, David. Nice singing, Mary.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's fun to sing along. I was harmonizing with you.
oh, nice.
So good to see you all. Yes. Okay. And thank you, everybody. And Tammy will go ahead and mute us. And
Hello, everyone. I'm here with today's Time for All Ages. I'm going to share my screen real quick. So this is the Anti-Racist Baby. It's a board book, one of those little square books, and it's by Ibram X. Kendi. As we're beginning this book, one of the first lines is the anti-racist baby is not born, they're bred. So as we're reading, notice what the baby's learning, but also notice what the grown-ups are doing too. So the anti-racist baby. Anti-racist baby is bred, not born. Anti-racist baby is raised to make society transform. We have a picture of a bunch of people. It looks like they're at a protest for Black Lives Matter. Babies are taught to be racist or anti-racist. There's no neutrality. Take these 9 steps to make equity a reality. And a baby's playing with magnet letters and has put race on their magnet board. Open your eyes to all skin colors. Anti-racist baby learns all the colors, not because race is true. If you claim to be colorblind, you deny what's right in front of you. We see a bunch of babies from different families of different races together at a park. Use your words to talk about race. No one will see racism if we only stay silent. If we don't name racism, it won't stop being so violent. And the baby's looking through binoculars and sees a white child climb a ladder and a Black child having all these obstacles. Point at policies as the problem, not people. Some people get more while others get less, because policies don't always grant equal access. The baby is very upset noticing one butterfly gets to fly straight to the flowers and other butterflies are caught in nets. Shout, there's nothing wrong with people. Even though all races are not treated the same, we are all human, anti-racist baby can proclaim. We see pictures of lots of families who are very loving. Celebrate all our differences. Anti-racist baby doesn't see a certain group as better or worse. The anti-racist baby loves a world that's truly diverse. You see a bunch of babies hanging out. Some of them are white, some might be Asian or Black, and they're all having a good time. 6, knock down as the stack of cultural blocks. Anti-racist baby appreciates how groups speak, dance, and create as they choose. Anti-racist baby welcomes all groups voicing their views. The racist baby is knocking down some blocks. Confess when being racist. Nothing disrupts racism more than when we confess to racist ideas that we sometimes express. We're seeing anti-racist baby dancing and they fall down and they get back up again. Grow to be anti-racist. Anti-racist baby is always learning, changing, and growing. Anti-racist baby stays curious about all people and isn't all-knowing. Looks like anti-racist baby's growing up a little bit and they're still learning. They're a toddler dancing around. Believe we shall overcome racism. Anti-racist baby is filled with the power to transcend, my friend, and doesn't judge a book by its cover, but reads it until the end. And the anti-racist baby is learning in a garden with a book and flowers. And that's that, Anti-Racist Baby by Ibram X. Kendi, who you're gonna hear a little bit more about later. The end.
Thank you, Rebecca. It is our practice here at South Valley to share our Sunday worship offerings with a charitable organization that aligns with our principles and values. For July and August, we have been sharing our offering with Black Lives Matter Utah, a local group that has been working diligently to stop police brutality. However, in months in which we have a fifth Sunday, like today, our social action team has decided to focus inward and split the offering with our own Samaritan Fund here at South Valley. Our Samaritan Fund exists to meet the critical needs of families and individuals who contact us and need assistance. Please give as generously as you can. Our Samaritan Fund is directly our love in action. South Valley also has an app for giving. We have an account with Givelify. This allows South Valley to continue receiving funds in the support of our work while we're in this online space. You're invited to give using the link that is being dropped into the chat box, or you can go to your phone and download the app directly. Using this app will allow us to be generous within the community at large. And Lori is now going to put our offering words into the chat box. Let us read these words together. We are this church. We are its hands, its heart, its voice. Together we share the warmth of this community and sustain it with our gifts. For all that we have received and all we have found the courage to give, may we be truly grateful. May these gifts be a blessing to South Valley and to those who ask for our assistance through the Samaritan Fund. At this time, I invite you to settle your feet on the ground, to take a deeper breath if you notice that you've been breathing more shallow, and to allow your body to settle into a time of meditation, reflection, and prayer. Our prayer this morning is entitled "The Grasp of Your Hand" by Rabindranath Tagore. Let me not pray to be sheltered from dangers, but to be fearless in facing them. Let me not beg for the stilling of my pain, but for the heart to conquer it. Let me not crave an anxious fear to be saved, but hope for the patience to win my freedom. Grant me that I may not be a coward, feeling your mercy in my success alone, but let me find the grasp of your hand in my failure. Let us sit together in silent meditation for a time.
Jacqueline Woodson was the U.S. Young People's Poet Laureate 2015 to 2017. In 2014, she published Brown Girl Dreaming, and it was her breakout. It was a memoir written in poetry for an adolescent audience. She's since written many things for many different groups. A snippet from Brown Girl Dreaming, How to Listen Number 7. Even the silence has a story to tell you. Just listen, listen. Jacqueline says in an essay, Continue to Rise, from Well-Read Black Girl, 2018. So much depends on us remembering our past. We live in a country that likes to forget who was here before us, likes to forget who built the country, likes to forget who this country was stolen from. And so, for me as a writer, it's important to know that I'm standing on the shoulders of the writers that came before me, the queer folks who died before me, my friends who passed away because of HIV, cancer, lack of access to decent health care. I'm here because of the indigenous people of this country, because of the enslaved people who were here before me, the young people of the civil rights movements who fought hard to get me to this moment. My biggest responsibility is to recognize that I am part of a continuum that I didn't just appear and start writing stuff down. I'm writing stuff down because Audre Lorde wrote stuff down, because James Baldwin wrote stuff down, because Toni Morrison and Langston Hughes and County Cullen and Virginia Hamilton and all of the other people who came before me set the state for my work. I have to keep all that in my heart as I move through the world, not only for the deep respect I have for them, but also for my own strength. So ends our reading for today.
So I wish to tell you a little bit more about where I am from. I am from my grandmother, who grew up on a dry farm in South Dakota during the Dust Bowl. When she was 7 years old, her father left the farm and the family. When I think about the sacrifices my great-grandmother must have had to make to feed her 7 children, I feel humbled by the relative privilege that I live in. I am also from my grandfather, who grew up in St. Louis, Missouri. He moved around a lot as a kid because that was how you dealt with not being able to pay the back rent. And my grandparents met in San Francisco during the Second World War and were quickly married before my grandfather was sent overseas. And my mother was born while he was away. These 2 strands of my story tell you a little bit more about me. They tell you some of the likely values that shaped my childhood, values like perseverance and hard work. These strands also tell you likely which generation I belong to and perhaps what my citizenship status is. And this constellation of information, along with my gender, my race, my education status, these things constitute my social location. And my social location functions as a cultural shorthand for perhaps what sort of typical attitudes I might display as a result of my social conditioning. And academic sources further define it as the point where all features embodied in a person overlap, where all the features embodied in a person overlap. And it places us in particular relationships to others, to the dominant culture of the United States, and to the rest of the world. It determines the kinds of power and privilege we have access to and can exercise, as well as the situations in which we have less power or privilege. And this relational mix of power and privilege is what I wish to bring to your attention within the midst of my story. In a minute, I will share a little bit about where that story of my grandparents' meeting goes. But first, I wish to give you a metaphor to rest it upon. A common metaphor for understanding the form and the function of social location is that of a gilded bird cage. And this cage has all the functions and shape and features of a standard cage. The cage has a top and a bottom, bars and doors and rungs inside of it. And these features are made up from the sum total of all the histories of all the people of all the world. Upon the rungs perch many beautiful birds. Now the top of the cage is more desirable for all the obvious reasons. It is more spacious, the food is better, conditions are good, and the views are amazing. As one moves down the cage, the conditions worsen and it is more crowded. And at the bottom of the cage, there just simply isn't enough. And the birds here are subject to the obvious problems of being the lowest birds. Now the birds at the top, they like it up there. And they work hard to make sure that they and their children can enjoy the benefits of being at the top. And the top birds have been at the top so long that they have largely forgotten about the lower down birds. Not completely, of course. Sometimes they fly down and bring gifts to those on the lower rungs, but they always return to their own rung. The top birds, just like the lower birds, have been in this cage for so long that the top birds have forgotten about the bars completely. They've learned to accept that this is just how things are and to fear anything that might topple the cage over. For in the absence of freedom, stability will do just fine. Some of the birds are brave and bold, and their songs can be heard throughout the ages, singing of a time and a place when we might yet be free of this cage. But as of now, all of us remain locked in that cage. Now let's return to the story. So after the war, my grandfather continued his service in the Air Force as a mechanic, and my grandmother worked in the civil service. They were stationed all over the country and ultimately settled in the Sacramento area, where they bought a house by taking advantage of the GI Bill. And the GI Bill is a critical piece of my story here. Passed in 1944, the GI Bill provided, among many other services, access to low-interest home mortgages for returning servicemen. And this bill transformed the landscape of the United States and resulted in the largest increase in home ownership this country and the world has ever seen. It helped to elevate my grandparents from poor and struggling to stable and middle class. And thus the GI Bill radically altered the trajectory of the maternal side of my family. By taking advantage of the GI Bill, my grandparents gained access to the American dream in a way that was formerly closed to them. They were elevated from lower working class to middle class. And as a result, my mother had access to a great education and was the first in her family to graduate from college. She and my father continued the upward trajectory, and I enjoyed an upper middle class childhood. My brother and I both have college degrees. I have a master's, and my brother will soon earn his PhD. And I know of no other reverends in my family. So the GI Bill was good for my family. It was good for a lot of families, but only if that family was white. But the GI Bill was essentially closed to African American and other non-white families. Local ordinances restricting where Blacks could rent or buy land, and all white governing boards ensured that the benefits of the GI Bill were bestowed almost exclusively upon white families. In fact, of the first 67,000 low-interest mortgages granted via the GI Bill, only 100 went to non-white families. It wasn't until the passage of the Fair Housing Act of 1968 that this dramatic transfer of wealth began to be redressed. But it was a little too late and a little too little, because a generation of whites had already experienced an acceleration of wealth accumulation and were fast passing on their accumulated wealth to their children. Thus, when my grandparents died in 2004 and 2005, I received an inheritance from their estate that allowed me to purchase a condo and then later move to a larger house. This inheritance also helped make it possible for me not to work when my son was born. And I recall the bittersweet tears I cried when I received that inheritance, relief at what this money would allow my family to be and to do, and grief of missing not just my grandparents, but also my mother, for she had died many years ago, and her death meant that my brother and I received an inheritance in her place. But it was a complicated story. For you see, this boon in my life, an inheritance that allowed me to achieve financial stability and stay home with my children, is the direct result of racist policies and practices in the United States. And knowing this radically changes my understanding of my own story. No longer can I blindly celebrate the achievements and the sacrifices of my parents and grandparents. And no more can I indulge in a by my bootstraps narrative that tells me if you work hard, you can do anything. Because the truth is, everybody works hard. Black, brown, white, or mixed. But some of us were given all the tools and all the materials and all the training, while others were told they didn't have right to access the training or the ability to produce results in the first place. And I might never have discovered that story had I not gone back and reinvestigated that during my seminary training. Racism is socialized into us, physically, mentally, emotionally, culturally, and spiritually. And breaking through the cultural scripts is difficult because doing so means trusting in the emergence of a new paradigm that we cannot describe with our current language and our current thinking. And thus making the necessary shifts can feel confusing and even threatening. In his book, How to Become an Anti-Racist, Ibram X. Kendi demonstrates through evocative personal narrative and focused data analysis just how deep the cultural scripting goes. Dr. Kendi defines a racist as one who is supporting a racist policy through their actions or inactions, or expressing a racist idea. And an anti-racist is one who is supporting an anti-racist policy through their actions and expressing an anti-racist idea. Thus, there is no middle ground between racist and anti-racist, for you either actively work against racism or you remain part of the problem. And all of us, each and every one of us living in the United States, is part of that complex system that continues to perpetuate and strengthen racist policies and practices and attitudes. For while we may not actively support racist policies, we still benefit from them. And while we may not espouse support for racist policies, if we are inactive, our inactions allow us and allow those policies to continue. So there really is no middle ground, which is not the same as saying we cannot evolve or learn and grow, as Rebecca's Story for All Ages so eloquently emphasized. We are not going to give up, because giving up is not an option for those who don't have privilege. It is okay to make mistakes along the way. I am making mistakes. I'm sure I've actually made mistakes this morning, and I will continue to make mistakes. And Dr. Kendi invites us to understand that we have work to do as people living in the United States. And for those of us with white privilege, the right use of our privilege is toward the dismantling of racist policies. This means walking away from the narrative of colorblindedness and instead understanding that white is a racial identity that has been offered up as the top position in the proverbial birdcage. This is just a fact. I am describing the racist system. This is about policies, not people. This is about behaviors, not core character. The impact of this racist system on people of color is a life lived under constant threat of physical and moral injury, stunted life expectancy, limited careers, poverty, unemployment, and death. For those who embody in a white privileged way, awareness of these racist system places them in moral crisis, for they must daily decide how to manage the feelings associated with moral crisis. Feelings of anger, sadness, denial, fear, guilt, shame, and to continue to act in anti-racist ways despite and in the midst of those difficult feelings. Those feelings are normal in the midst of a paradigm shift, but feeling a feeling rarely results in death. Being Black or brown can and does. And so those of us in white privilege, we must work to first take responsibility for our feelings, seek care when we need it, and then listen deeply and partner, and allow the people of color to be the leaders rather than the other way around. Supporting an anti-racist policy enables people of color to be safe, to be free, to be whole, and to enjoy self-determination on their own terms. Especially, this is important work for us to notice and to get out of the way of, because we may not fully understand if we have a privileged place in this work. It is not important that we fully understand or wholly agree for this work to move forward. When the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King cast his powerful vision of a colorblind society in August of 1963, he was expressing it in the context of the complacency, of his frustration with the complacency of the white community. Listen to his words written from the jail cell in Birmingham, Alabama, earlier that year. Dr. King writes, quote, "First, I must confess that over the last few years, I have been gravely disappointed with the white moderate. I have almost reached the regrettable conclusion that the Negro's great stumbling block in the stride toward freedom is not the White Citizens Council or the Ku Klux Klaner, but the white moderate, who is more devoted to order than to justice, who prefers a negative peace, which is the absence of tension, to a positive peace, which is the presence of justice. The white moderate who constantly says, I agree with you in the goal you seek, but I can't agree with your methods of direct action, who paternalistically feels he can set the timetable for another man's freedom, who lives by the myth of time, who constantly advises the Negro to wait until, quote, a more convenient season. Shallow understanding from people of goodwill is more frustrating than absolute misunderstanding from people of ill will. Lukewarm acceptance is much more bewildering than outright rejection," unquote. Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King was talking to us, liberal religious people in predominantly white denominations, who too often have feared instability more than we have loved freedom. Our denomination is working very hard right now to break through and break down our embedded cultural assumptions that keep us locked in this gilded cage of racism. In the past, our denomination has made promises to our brothers and sisters and siblings of color and not followed through. I pray that this time we will finally find a new way. It is not enough to be against racist policies. We must actively stand as anti-racist. It is not enough to resist racism passively. We must rather take the position of being anti-racist. This is deeply spiritual and religious work and is best done in community with one another. Our Unitarian Universalist values call us to this work again and again and again. And when we fall down and fall short, we begin again and again and again. I know we can do this work. And I ask each of us gathered in this communal space this morning, in this congregation, to consider what it will take for us to move towards becoming anti-racist individually and collectively. And especially if you embody a privileged space when it comes to racism, I ask you to consider where in your story there may be connections to racist policies and practices that allowed you to be where you are today, and to tell the truth, about it. That is the beginning of the work. I trust that this community is capable of it, and I love you all. Let us work in active engagement and positive transformation. There is no other way. God help us. May it be so. Blessed be, and amen.
We'll now sing hymn number 123. Lori will drop the words into the chat box, Spirit of Life.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, winds set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
We will now have our Chalice Extinguishing. I want to just make a correction to an earlier announcement I made. The New to UU meeting is at 12:30, not noon, and so is the Cups meeting is at 12:30 today. Lori's going to put the Chalice Extinguishing words in the chat box. You're invited to unmute yourselves and stand as we say those words together. We extinguish this chalice, but not
the warmth of
Warmth of
community,
the
the
light
light of truth,
or the
or the
energy
energy
of
of
action.
action.
We hold
We
each
hold
other
each other in our hearts
until we meet
until
again.
we meet again.
Thank you, and we'll now be muted to listen to David's postlude.
What I've washed is either
The postlude piece, again by Ricardo Carbajo, this is called Anahuac, which is an Aztec word meaning the land between the waters, and that is the word that they used for their nation, one of the words for Mexico itself. So this is a tribute to the pre-Columbian Aztec people.
Thank you, David and Mary, for the gift of your music this morning. As you go forth into your afternoon, may the spirit of love surround you and hold you close. May your heart open, even as it is breaking, so that more light can shine through. Be well, be good, be a blessing on the world. May it be so, and go now in peace. We'll be back in a few minutes for our social time. We encourage everyone